Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is lists. I think that when we get overwhelmed with so many things to do, that we tend to write lists, and then the lists can be a source of overwhelm in and of themselves. So today we're going to talk about lists and how we might be able to use them in ways that support us in gaining focus and clarity, and enable us to manage the stress that the overwhelm of too much could be presenting us with. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, and creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub our palms together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, all that sensation, the tickling and tingling when you stop rubbing them together, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be here with you this morning. And today we're talking about lists. So I don't know about you, but I know for myself, holding a lot in my head in itself is stressful in terms of my to-dos. The things that I want to get done, if I hold it all in my head, which I tend to do, there's a stress that's inherent to that, just a little bit of a sense of overwhelm around that. And so when I put it on paper, then I can relieve myself of that initial stress. But then the list tends to get really long. And the thing also about the list is that the things that are on the list could feel very, very overwhelming. For instance, I remember when I was in the process of building my practice, and one of the things that I needed to do was to put up a website. And so on the list would be put up website. Well, that's pretty ominous task, right? That's a task that has a whole list of its own associated with it. And so one of the things that I learned that is very helpful to be able to manage a lot to do is to break things down into their component pieces. And that way, if I have 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there, I can take care of the little details. And then there are other things that require blocks of time. And then I can allocate those blocks more effectively. So the list approach can be very powerful and very helpful, and at the same time, it can be its own source of overwhelm. And what we want to do is look at how we can manage these many different things. So for myself, interestingly, right now I don't have a lot of have tos. I don't have a lot that is demanding my immediate attention, and I do have a lot that is on my would like to do list. And it's so interesting to see how time moves, time, subjectively, the subjective experience of time passing, and how it can feel like it's just disappearing, like there's so much, or there's nothing. It can feel like, where did the time go? I didn't do anything today. And the unusual position I'm in right now is that I have the luxury of not having to do anything right now, really. But there are all these things that have been waiting in the wings, calling for attention. So we've talked about this before in terms of how we allocate our time, and prioritizing things from this quadrant kind of system, where we have urgent and not important. We have, so above the line we have important, and the vertical line is urgent and not urgent. So above the line is important, and we have the choices there of urgent and important and not urgent. And right now I'm in the realm of important and not urgent mostly, but then prioritizing the things that belong there is a very interesting thing. So when we write these lists, we want to break them down into the quadrants. We also have not urgent but important. So I have some of those also. And we also have not urgent, not important. So those things we can take off the list completely. We can put those in a someday, one day, or a nice to do kind of list that then isn't taking our energy. And then we have our remaining options. So it's interesting to me in thinking about how to prioritize these elements on my not urgent but important list. And my I think I actually said that twice, didn't I? But anyway, so my important but not urgent list, when I look at that, I'm talking about important in terms of my values, like what is going to serve me best in this moment, what is going to light me up, or what is going to feed me, nourish me. So it's interesting because the criteria with which we evaluate these different quadrants is the quadrant I missed was urgent but not important. So there are things that are calling our attention urgently, but they're really not important. So we can eliminate those things in many cases, or we can allocate a nominal amount of time if necessary for those parts of the for that quadrant of things to do. So what I want to talk about is the criteria with which we evaluate what belongs in what quadrant. So if we're in work mode, if we have things that other people are calling us, are depending on us for, or that we need to do, time-based things for work or something, that's one way to evaluate things is, what is going to be the most effective use of my time in terms of earning a living, in terms of fulfilling my purpose while earning a living, hopefully. So we talked the other day about ikigai, which is purpose-based living, where there is the meeting of purpose, what your purpose, passion, capability, and earnability. So hopefully we've got those things. Ultimately, we want to have all of those things intersecting to be our livelihood. And that's why some of the things that are not urgent but important need to find time to take precedence. Like, we get to elevate those things because those are often the things that are moving us more in the direction of that fuller expression of ourselves. Developing a new business, for instance, it can keep taking the back seat because we have other things that are more in our face, even if they're urgent but not important. And we expend all our energy on these things that are the shiny thing right in front of our faces without the perspective of our commitment to generate something new. This is why deadlines can be so powerful, so helpful for us. We often create stresses for ourselves with those deadlines. And some of us need that kind of constraint to work more effectively. Because when we have no structure, it's like, oh my gosh, now what? So we need to generate some kind of structure. And oftentimes the structure we then generate creates the stresses that we were trying to escape in the first place. So it's a tightrope in certain respects. It's a delicate dance to find the balance between all of these priorities. And what it comes down to is beyond the essentials, meaning the things that absolutely have to get done. And oftentimes we think things have to get done that don't have to get done. But beyond those essentials, we often don't use our values in determining the things that we put our energy to. Like if we recognized, for instance, if we were starting a new business or creating a new venture, if we recognized its alignment with our higher values and our sense of mission and purpose, then that gives us a sense of permission to elevate that thing to a higher priority. And so it's true that we only have so much time, and we have we constantly face choices about how to allocate that time and that energy. Um, and when we allow ourselves to go to creating these lists from a values-based perspective, or to be prioritizing these lists from a values-based perspective, and really being in touch with what is deeply resonant and important to us, then we will feel a much richer sense of accomplishment, a much richer sense of fulfillment when when what we are doing is in alignment with our highest commitments. And so I often talk about being a human being rather than a human doing. And here we're talking about doing, but the idea is to connect this doing as much as possible with our inspiration, with a deep feeling of alignment and fulfillment and intentionality. And I think that there's a richness to be discovered in that arena. And also, as far as the lists go, they can, particularly when you're able to generate those lists based on the criteria that we've spoken about and prioritize them accordingly, that these lists can bring us back into focus. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I can just drift off into distraction and forget about some of the things that I had an intention and commitment um, to put my energy toward. So I'm very much about finding our way to connect to this deeply intuitive, inspired space of being from which we can generate our lives. And we've spoken a bunch about how to create new thought and what does it take to do that. When we write lists, it's a means of mental decluttering. And because if we get it out of our heads, then we don't have to put all the energy to trying to remember all those things. We have the list. And we want to be able to also figure out how to not be a slave to the list. And how do we get to generate, maybe to support new ways of being in the way that we're writing the lists, in the things that we're putting on the list. So I invite you, if you're a list person, and I'm not typically, actually, but sometimes it's just really helpful so that I can track all the balls in the air. And I'm inspiring myself in this time of no structure to create the list structure, at least to give me some focus. So that's the idea, is that a well-crafted list can support you in directing your focus, directing your energy, directing your attention. It can act as a guide, that kind of can bring you back in to a more deliberate, direct focus. So Another thing I think that could make lists be more supportive for some of us is to write them in color, to be playful about it, because a list that has any length to it can feel more overwhelming than the overwhelm that we felt before we wrote the list. So if we write the list in different colors so that there's more playfulness about the activity that goes around whatever the list item is. And maybe we could write the list in the colors that are relevant to the quadrants, the urgent and important, or those kinds of colors. Or we could write the list and then put markings down in different colors to make it more colorful and playful to be looking at. One thing actually that I found really, really helpful, because I would write these lists and there would be things on the list that I just didn't do. And those were things that were obviously urgent and not important ultimately. Like I didn't prioritize them enough to do them. And actually, this is where a list actually can give us feedback, because if you have lists like I've had where I have all these things on there and there are certain things that keep getting transferred from list to list to list, maybe you can make a rule for yourself that after 3 transfers, it gets put into the someday, one day pile. Because for me, for instance, certain social media things, we're supposed to do all the stuff on social media to promote business and build a brand and all that kind of thing. And they would go from list to list to list until I finally just got honest enough with myself to say, you know what? You're not going to do this. You don't want to do this. You have no energy behind it. It's somebody else's should. So bag it, put it out there for maybe someday, one day, or just get rid of it. So lists can be a mirror to reflect our true commitments and our true alignment, because if these things that are on the list keep getting pushed off, maybe they just don't belong there. Now, I know that a lot of people use lists and find the things they least want to do and they do that first. So that would be for the urgent and important. Sometimes there are urgent and important things that we just don't want to do, and we tend to want to put them off. Maybe those are the things we get to do first. And that way, then we have the sense of accomplishment. And we also have the relief of not having to continue to worry about facing that. So I think that if we can bring a sense of play into this realm of doing, and bring a sense of intentionality into the realm of doing that is connected with our why, that we can reduce the sense of overwhelm and pull the heaviness out of this experience of all these things to do. And if we do find ourselves in that space of overwhelm, to take ourselves back into a space of beingness, to be talking and looking at, talking about and looking at with ourselves, how do I want to be in the face of this? Who do I need to be to bring joy to this process? Who do I need to be to release my resistance. Because it's so funny. I have a friend that was in the midst of decluttering, and they were saying, well, at this rate, it's going to take me a whole year to get this done. And I was able to point out that there was a lot of resistance and thinking about doing the decluttering, but not a lot of time that had actually been spent in the process of it. And when they realized that, it put things in very different perspective. But the resistance that we have about doing stuff is part of it. It builds on itself. It makes the to-do feel so much bigger than it actually is, because we're spending all this energy resisting. So if we have a way to be able to release ourselves from the resistance, then we can be more readily effective. We can allow ourselves to be in greater flow. So really the idea here is to transform our experience of lists into something that is, rather than a taskmaster, something that's a tool, and something that brings us awareness. Like, instead of, okay, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, I'm going through and I'm just accomplishing all the things on my list. We often check out in the process of all the doing. And the idea here is to transform the list into something that is a nurturing thing, something that is serving us, something that is helping us to refocus on our true commitments, to express greater alignment. That's really how we can, the attitude we can take toward these lists, so that we can really utilize them in a way that elevates us rather than reduces us to just being a doing, rather than a being. So to presence ourselves, and you know, in the context of your list, maybe put in things like breathe, or dance for a few minutes, or sing, play music, something that is a reminder that we get to be present in the context of creating the physical manifestations that we're looking to create with all our doing. So with that, I think that's it for today, talking about lists. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And I so appreciate this opportunity to be engaging with you and having you join with me in consideration of all these ideas and thoughts, and I just am deeply, deeply grateful. So until next time, so much love.